Hello and welcome to our video contemplation of day signature 57. This frequency corresponds to the Knight of Hearts, the prime instinct to share, and the noble role of...
Assurance.
Thank you. Assurance. It is represented by the angels of... Progress. Boy, I'm losing it today. Progress and intuition.
Yes. Yep. So we have the 35th angel of progress, who walks the pathway of adventure to become the embodiment of surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have the 57th angel of intuition, who walks the pathway of body listening to become the embodiment of clarity.
To become the very embodiment of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Who does not want that? This is going to be a good one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's do what we would normally do. Rewind to the beginning and break it down piece for piece.
Right. So we're on the Knight now, the
Correct.
Knight of Hearts.
The Knight of Hearts. The Knight who, if you recall from the Knight of Wands, has nothing to prove because the keynote for the Knight is triumph.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very different take on the theme of a knight than what a lot of our epic stories tell.
Mm-hmm.
This is the knight who has already succeeded and taken ownership of his role or her role as such.
Right. And he has not achieved this level of assurance or confidence through proving himself in any way. But we do see certain pathways that obviously demonstrate how he is able to take on this noble role of assurance.
Absolutely. Assurance is a word we want to spend some time with.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one step before that, we should just remind everyone that we are in the hearts now.
Yeah.
So the Knight of Wands was one story. The Knight of Hearts is an altogether different story.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with the life of the heart. We're dealing with the willingness to come so close enough to your own life that you are able finally to feel it. Were you pointing at something?
No.
Okay. So we're in the Knight of Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
We have this prime instinct to share.
Yep.
We're going to come back to that perhaps.
Absolutely. I think it's very relevant, especially when we talk about the 35th angel of progress.
Okay. So we will return to the prime instinct. But I think it's a good opportunity right here at the start of this conversation to look at the word assurance and to consider what it means.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of these words that deserves a little time, a little bit of research even. We love looking these words up and reading their definitions.
Mm-hmm.
A word like assurance has at least two primary ways that it can be understood. The first is something that's being offered. You can offer someone an assurance.
Mm-hmm.
This is a movement from your heart to theirs. And this Knight absolutely moves in this way. The Knight of Hearts is going to be more or less equivalent to the original or traditional Knight of Cups. Although I think you'll find that it's nothing at all like the traditional descriptions of that knight. Knight of Cups, Knight of Hearts, same suit, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that knight was all about affection. That knight was about flinging his heart open and allowing his life to mean something poetic, something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this very thing that in traditional descriptions of the Knight of Cups was derided as being ineffective,
right.
Not very knightly, in fact.
But also being a natural romantic.
He's a natural romantic, which is all well and good, except he's supposed to be a knight.
Yeah.
What's he doing? Singing songs and reading poetry. That's for the bard. You're a knight. Do something.
Right. So is this like Don Quixote, maybe?
Could be. But I think what we're dealing with here is significantly more grounded and takes the best parts of those previous descriptions and gives them a home here in the life of the heart. It's amazing to me that one of the most heart-opened characters in the entire traditional tarot was historically so diminished by its descriptions, when in fact the very thing that made that knight different from every other member of the tarot is the very thing we find here again, represented on a much higher octave.
Yes.
We find that to move through life with your heart open is the only way to encounter your own life at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way not only to receive the richness of your life, but significantly more, no, not more importantly, equally importantly, it's the way you share from that same well of amazement and richness beyond yourself. You allow for that to overflow its bounds in you and touch others too. And here, of course, we begin to edge in on this prime instinct to share. It's built in. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's one version of assurance. Assurance is a movement of the heart. I can't help but think of the message that we have on our letterboard in the kitchen. I choose you every day.
Yes.
Simple words. I choose you every day. Interesting words, in fact, because aren't they?
It's a frequency match.
All right. So I choose you every day is actually an exact match to the frequency of 57. Mm-hmm. I must have known that somewhere in my brain. Yeah. But I'm reminded of this phrase because when we say this to one another, and we do, it's on purpose. It's a way for the heart to communicate that assurance that this connection, that this world that we're growing together is very much on purpose, and that over and over again, moment by moment, being together is a sincere choice. That's one example of a heart level assurance. But the word assurance also speaks to this theme of confidence, mm-hmm. of firm conviction, of deliberation, of complete knowing. When you are totally assured, there's no question. And so when you move with assurance, you move
freely.
Freely, absolutely. Wow, great word. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. You are completely liberated to the movement. Right. There's no fear. There's no doubt. There's no wondering. There's mm-hmm. no 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's a wholehearted movement because you are totally assured. And when you are self-assured, that means that you know the truth about yourself. There's no question. Mm-hmm. You don't wonder if perhaps you might, in fact, be an unhelpful influence. If maybe you're 90% good, there's 10% evil. It's nothing like this. Assurance is a 100% awareness. So self-assurance is complete self-knowing. Self-assurance is awareness of the capital G goodness within you, and the awareness that that goodness translates from a well of perfection into the body of you here, right now, in this life, in this world, that it's not something eventual or previous, it's something alive.
Right.
That's self-assurance.
Mm-hmm. And that assurance really does translate into action, mm-hmm. this freedom of movement. It actually is perfectly aligned with the theme of the month, mm-hmm. which is the frequency of 55 and freedom.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Mm-hmm. We can see that weaving in, especially, of course, because that frequency of 55 is correspondent to the Queen of Hearts. So if we think of this as a noble family, the knight in this family, of course, is learning from and devoted to the needs and the models set by the queen and the king of that court, so mm-hmm. to speak. That is obviously totally metaphorical, but you can see the connecting point there. Mm-hmm. So, assurance, what would it mean? Just even imagine it. What would it mean to be able to move through life with such complete assurance, such complete confidence in life that you know nothing is out to get you, no one can harm you, you are impervious to damage, you are completely free to choose in any direction all the time, mm-hmm. that everything you could ever want is given, that your only true requirement in life is to enjoy the gift of life. To know all of this with complete assurance is to live a completely transformed and a completely liberated life.
Yes.
That's what we find here.
I mean, I think this is a really good tie-in to this 35th Angel of Progress, because what we mean by this Angel of Progress is the opposite of isolation. When we're afraid and not feeling confident, we don't want to venture out. We don't want to interact. Yeah. But this Angel of Confidence is the pathway, or this perfect companion for this knight, because the knight, being so self-assured and confident and just very clear, knows that he is free to move about. And of course, you want to interact. Of course, you want to go on adventures and quests and leave the boundaries of the kingdom to see what is out there.
Yes. So you said the Angel of Confidence.
I did?
Yeah, which one is adorable.
Oh.
And two is like so perfectly connected. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's the Angel of Progress, but there is no progress unless you move from a ground of confidence. Now, that ground of confidence at first can feel shaky. That progress at first can emerge from like a willingness to kind of test out what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately what it develops is evidence for that which you're developing confidence in. It proves life, in this case, proves itself to you over and over again until you're able to move from a place of complete fearlessness.
Yeah.
Free of doubt.
Yeah. Do you think we could share the frequency match words for 57?
Yeah.
Because they really describe
It's a good time.
this night
Let's do it.
perfectly. So we've got, actually, the word assurance is a perfect match to 57,
Mm-hmm.
which is how this night ended up with that word as this noble role.
Mm-hmm.
We also have choose to enjoy, committed, covenant, determined, empowered, fearless, I choose heaven,
Mm-hmm.
powerful, posture, and spirit. And those are just a few. But
Yeah, I love how you wrote powerful posture next to each other. Like
I did. I linked them
Yeah.
because they are right next to each other. So it was a natural sort of way to just read it across as powerful posture. And that is confidence. That is assurance.
Yes.
Perfectly
Yes.
described.
how that would be embodied.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't help but zoom in on the word covenant.
Mm-hmm.
It's not entirely explicit, but what I see is that assurance, what we're describing as assurance, is the blossom of that covenant.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, as we devote ourselves, as we make a covenant with ourselves, a covenant with life in a particular way, on a particular theme, what I'm seeing is that we're essentially making a covenant to see ourselves in the clearest possible way,
Mm-hmm.
in the highest and best light, to perceive of life as it is. It's a covenant to the truth. That's what it is. Assurance only emerges as a result of that deep personal inner covenant. That makes sense, right? If you're not truly committed to that awareness, if you think life is mostly good, you will live in fear. Do you realize that? If life is 99.99999% good and there's just a little bit of maybe not good or even evil or darkness in it, you then spend the remainder of your life guarding against that tiny potential.
Yeah.
Assurance emerges from a 100% awareness, a 100% devotion to the light of truth. So I see this covenant being made between the mind and the heart and the life as we train the intellect to relax into what the heart knows, really,
Mm-hmm.
and to begin permitting the body to move through life in a way that relies on, that depends upon, that knows it's held.
Mm-hmm.
It relies upon that life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So those are beautiful. Another thing, let me see if I can track back to it when you were talking about the angel of
Progress.
confidence. Dang, it was something you said and I was like, oh, this is important.
The interaction, the sharing.
Oh, it was about the night kind of moving out beyond the boundaries of the kingdom.
Uh-huh.
We talked about this earlier on our walk.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly what differentiates the knight from a peasant in this story, so to speak. The idea of a peasant is the idea of someone who remains in the village, right? They are too afraid to break the barriers or boundaries of what they have known, and so they do what they've always done. There's nothing wrong with that, but the larger life we're called to is the larger life of the knight. We're called to, suit up, hop on our trusty steed, and ride out beyond the village gates,
Mm-hmm.
and encounter the wilderness of our life, which is the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what each step is taking us to, but if we do know that each step is going to produce more good, more of life, if we do know that the wilderness is functioning to our benefit in every case, there's nothing to fear. We break out of those gates at full speed,
Right.
because there's nothing we will encounter that defies us. Everything illuminates the truth within and expands it. Everything gives back to us. We know this. And so the knight, in that posture of assurance, is able to move in a way that's altogether different from those who are still kept small in the clutches of fear. As soon as any one of us breaks free of that fear, begins to act in a new way as a result of these new ideas that we're choosing to integrate, we are essentially elevated from that position of the peasant too afraid to move to the position of the knight, capable finally of authentic movement. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad I remembered that.
Yeah, me too.
So we can see how all of these words begin to come together. Let's look at the angels.
Yes.
The angel of progress walks the pathway of adventure to become the embodiment of... I've lost it.
Surprise.
Nice. You'd think we did that on purpose. It's unrehearsed. I just forgot it. And then the angel of intuition walks the pathway of body listening to become the very embodiment of clarity. So we can begin to connect some dots here too.
Yeah.
Progress and intuition.
Yeah. I mean, I think we want to make sure that also we tie the angel of progress to the prime instinct to share. Did we do that yet?
I don't think so. We can start there.
Okay.
Go for it. What do you see?
Well, I see the prime instinct to share being, again, like describing somebody who is not afraid, who doesn't feel the need to isolate, is so overflowing with, the enjoyment of life that they want to share. And this is what is meant by progress. We make progress when we're willing to interact with others, when we're willing to share what we have, what we know, what we see, all of these things. This is what starts us out on the adventure and this expansion, this freedom of movement. If we're afraid, we don't want to move. So I think what we can understand here is that this angel of progress is all about connecting to this prime instinct to share. It is a prime instinct, and we, as much as we may convince ourselves, oh, we're introverted or this or that, that is only, so true. I don't think that can be empirically like a true statement, because there is this prime instinct within us to share.
Yeah.
So
it's because there is no progress void of relationship. Right. Really consider that. It doesn't necessarily need to be human relationships. It's that your life is moving and everything around you is producing an experience. There's no such thing as experience void of relationship either. So when you begin to rediscover yourself at the center of your own life, relationship is built into that. You cannot help but then begin to establish higher and higher qualities of relationship with everything around you.
Yes.
So progress, what we would find here in this expression of progress, is a willingness to meet everything in your life as a friend, as an ally, as an opportunity. That's what permits progress, but that only works if you are totally self-assured on the subject of life. If you know absolutely that everything you meet is in fact a friend or an ally or an opportunity. So I can see that connection really powerfully. It's also worth saying on the subject of share, because we said we'd come back to it. We may as well spend a minute here in the prime instinct to share. This theme of assurance is altogether different from a cultivated self-confidence. This is not artificial. It's authentic. It's inherent. So when you move from complete knowing, there's a way in which that degree of confidence, that absolute knowing, pours out of you. An example that I can't help but consider is the example of Jesus. There's a reason that the message he had to share was delivered. Jesus didn't spend a lifetime in a cave meditating. Jesus shared what he knew, and if you look closely, you'll find that every master, every avatar throughout history has been filled up to such a great extent with complete knowing that they then have to give it away free of charge to anyone who will listen. So there is a prime instinct to share inherent to what we're referring to here as assurance, and it is not the same as a cultivated or artificial confidence. The difference between this and that is the difference between self-assurance and self-assertion, where you attempt to make your confidence known. This is the difference between sharing what is authentic and attempting to be seen for what is not, attempting to show what is not. Sharing and showing are not the same in this regard. You're not a showboat if you're the Knight of Hearts. You are, however, a model, and you are, however, a giver. I mean, the Knight of Hearts is always connected for me to this theme of giving. It's a deeply generous heart. That's what makes it so affectionate and poetic. It pours its heart into life. Isn't that one of the phrases at we were looking at 113? It's literally highlighted on the screen. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I pour affection into my life is a phrase that resonates at the frequency of 113, which we were drawn to because today is the third day of November, 11/3/113. Mm-hmm. That's what this does. Yeah. It's a pouring of that overflow back into life. It's not attempting to prove itself confident. Right. It doesn't need to. Mm-hmm. Again, this night is nothing to prove.
Right. Mm-hmm. So did you want to talk about progress and intuition?
Yeah. So what I see here is that there is no progress void of intuition, mm-hmm. which is really something to think about. We, in this society, currently anyway, have essentially been trained to equate progress to the intellect. It's about gathering information and being capable of essentially intelligent debate. Mm-hmm. It's kind of how we understand this theme of success or progress in this world. And what we're finding here is that true progress is something inherent to a deeper part of yourself than just the intellect. It's the intuition. It's something actually held in the body that begins or permits this process of continual growth. Mm-hmm. In other words, you don't get to come at life part way with just the intellect. All of you has to show up. We never intend to deride the mind, the mental capacity, or the intellect. We recognize them to be powerful, powerful contributors to the experience, but they are not the experience. That experience needs to be met completely by all of us, which is why the heart needs to open. And as the heart opens, we begin to develop sensitivity to the essential movements, the true richness of our lives. That's what we're finding here in these angels. The truest adventure is actually an inner reality. You experience all of these things outside of you, but first you experience them inside of you. And whatever you may experience outside of you, the ocean of response that emerges within you is the very thing producing what happens next. Mm. So we become, again, central to the experience only insofar as we are willing to return our energy into ourselves and allow that to pour itself out as a natural extension of what's happening inside. So intuition is connected to the heart. This pathway of body listening connects to the pathway of adventure. Mm-hmm. But what is body listening?
Tell us.
Body listening is one of 3 pillars that I've referred to many times and will never stop referring to. They are the foundational pillars for practicing or meeting life so fully. Right? In seer training, we work with these 3 pillars. They are body listening, wayfinding, and narrative design. The first of these is body listening. We need to develop this willingness and this capacity to tune into the signaling systems of our own being. Because as we're out on that adventure, we need a way to navigate that adventure. The way we navigate that adventure is what I would refer to as the practice of wayfinding. Mm-hmm. Wayfinding hinges upon your capacity to effectively apply this pathway, this practice of body listening. Are you willing to listen into your body, or have you closed yourself off to what your body communicates because you're too afraid of feeling anything? Mm-hmm. That's not uncommon. But it will be uncommon for most people watching this video. I imagine that if you're viewing this video, you have begun to pry open the doors of your heart and to permit some of that light in and out, and you're allowing yourself to feel things perhaps more now than ever. That is extremely important. It's utterly fundamental to the journey. There is no adventure outside of that, and there is no progress until there's a willingness to open this part of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So body listening is about developing sensitivity. Yeah. Interestingly, I've always connected this theme of sensitivity to the word fluidity, because when you become sensitive to life, you actually become capable of responding in a way that is much more like a dance than a paint by numbers attempt. That fluidity is a word that you used earlier in this conversation.
Oh.
We learn to dance with.
Yes.
Instead of go to war against, instead of try to hack our way through. It's a very different way of being. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of trying to copy paste something that you read about or something that you did before even into the current situation. It's always what is happening now in the now moment. And the body is the most equipped tool that you have at your disposal for assessing the now moment.
Absolutely. It's the very reason that we are embodied in this way, because there's no other way to actually sense and experience and enjoy the richness that is life as a material reality. This is the very moment. This body is the very moment where spirit meets matter and produces something. And that something is what you're feeling. That something is the massive inner world that is constantly moving like a constellation within you. Most people have been raised to silence that world because they're afraid of it and they don't understand it. In many cases, it's been kind of squeezed into this little heading called emotion and then, tossed into the backpack as something we hopefully never need to access. That's not at all what's happening here. We want to open to this world. We want to allow it to become primary because as creators, we're learning that this is the very center of the world we're producing all around us all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. As we become aware of it, we enter this inner constellation. We enter this richer world in order to begin producing that same reflection, that same world outside of us. Body listening is the beginning. We learn about body listening and wayfinding, and eventually we will also learn about narrative design in the Forgotten Sense, in levels 1 and 2 of the Forgotten Sense. This body listening itself is a central contributor to the Forgotten Sense program. And again, we're reminded of just how very important it is to have this information under your belt, to know what we're referring to when we talk about the Forgotten Sense. That program shows you how to begin interpreting the signals that your body has always been communicating to you. Those signals that you've probably been missing or misinterpreting. Believe it or not, it's worse to misinterpret than to miss because we take something that's pointing us in one direction and assume it's pointing us in the opposite. And we end up all out in the weeds, all twisted up, feeling completely lost, when in fact, the GPS, the system inherent to your being, is functioning flawlessly. You just haven't properly interpreted what it's doing, right? The Forgotten Sense is central to this conversation and every conversation, but especially here when we learn about body listening. I also can't help but remember something I read about some time ago about development of control and development of sensitivity. I can't help but see this in light of this sequential context we've met here in the Liberated Tarot.
Yep.
What I remember reading was something to the effect of how dangerous it is to develop sensitivity before developing control. Control needs to come first, or else we will essentially be swept away by the constellation, the inner constellation that is that movement of feeling, that movement of direct contact with all that richness, all that data, so to speak. So what the Forgotten Sense really does is the same thing this Liberated Tarot does. It shows you how to understand what's happening before diving headfirst into what's happening. It shows you how to develop a mental control, a behavioral control that can then be plugged into this opening of the heart. To open your heart is absolutely necessary. And all things considered, all of this does tend to happen at about the same time. But what needs to come first is a willingness to develop control over your ideas, over your inner imaginal world, so that when you connect your dots from what you believe something to mean and what is actually being represented in the feeling, you're actually you're telling a story that benefits you. You're able to effectively and properly interpret what the signal means. Without that control, the signal emerges, and again, you either miss it or misinterpret it. If you're very lucky, you will effectively interpret it, but most of us do not because we've been trained not to. With proper training, you begin to use the mind differently. You begin to act and behave and make decisions differently, and all of this becomes ultimately rooted in the single most significant resource that you have which is your capacity to feel, which is the body itself. So listening into what that has to say and becoming effective interpreters of those signals. And by the way, it's not difficult. We're not talking about interpreting or translating Chinese here. It's yes or no. It's binary. It could not be simpler, but you need to know how it works. This is the very thing that allows us not only to meet life as an adventure, but to navigate that adventure in a way that leads to progress rather than demise or, terror or lostness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So honestly, I felt pretty excited about all of that. As we moved through the swords and the wands, we were developing control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now here in the hearts, we open to something that we've become qualified to meet and effectively utilize.
Right.
And the knight is the first one to really take us there in this way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the knight who strikes out on the quests. It's the knight who goes on the adventure. We love this. Each of us is called to that adventure. And it's not a thing. It's not like you're called to the adventure of a new job. Yes, you may be. But every day we're called to the adventure of what that day holds. We don't know what's coming. We just know it's going to be good. And so what does all of this add up to in the embodiment?
Surprise.
Yes, the embodiment of surprise.
Mm-hmm.
If you know it's going to be good, but you don't know what it is, every time it lands, it is a surprise, and it's a good surprise.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have to look forward to.
Yep.
Surprise and clarity.
Clarity.
The embodiment of clarity. The moment you become capable of effectively and properly interpreting those inner signals, you very, very quickly develop the capacity to suss out what is true and what is not. You become exceptionally clear as a result, because that which is not equal to the truth is instantly recognized as such. You know exactly which signals are telling you, nope, not true. Mm-hmm. And you know exactly which signals are saying, that is the truth, and you can't possibly miss it because you feel it. This is the inner equipment that leads to the embodiment of clarity. But consider what this means, the embodiment of clarity. It means that becoming clear is not a mental movement. It's a physical one.
Mm-hmm.
It means that that sense of clarity is not intellectual. It's physical.
Right.
You feel it.
And that leads to that powerful posture
Mm-hmm.
that we were talking about. That assurance that the knight walks around, in.
Yes.
You can see how clarity, this embodiment of clarity, would be very closely linked to assurance, to standing taller, going wherever he is called to go, freely, without a doubt, mm-hmm. without hesitation, without fear.
They feel totally synonymous in a beautiful, beautiful way. I think what clarity in this position does is it shows us where assurance lives.
Yeah, where it stems from.
It's not a mantra. You're not saying, I am large, I am good, I am okay, I am held, right? This isn't convincing yourself. This is in your bones.
Mm-hmm.
That's where this lives. That's where assurance lives. And if it's in your bones, then it's something that's already in your bones. Mm-hmm. It's not something you're cultivating or developing or convincing. We're not talking about NLP or hypnosis or mantras. We're talking about something inherent to the fact of your existence, inherent to life itself and to your place in that life. That's what assurance is. And when you can tap that, all of the questions resolve.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because that's what it means to be clear. This is the embodiment of clarity. And that clarity is found not in straight thinking, not in having the right answers, and not in the need to know, but in a deeper capital K knowing inherent to who you are and inherent to life itself. It's in your bones. That is a very different way of thinking about clarity that, frankly, I've never thought about until today.
Yeah.
I always imagine, because you feel a mental clarity.
Yeah.
But there's no way to feel a mental anything. You don't feel mental movement.
Mm-hmm.
You feel a response to a mental movement.
Yeah.
So the feeling is where the clarity is held. You feel clear. It's responsive to the ideas that you've taken on. But what's happening and where it's happening is clarity in the body. That's really cool. And again, it connects us right back to the pathway of body listening. Honestly, all I can think is the very greatest adventure is this inner one.
Mm.
The world that we encounter is such... I just looked over at the screen and there was like a thumbs up. There must be some kind of weird hand gesture bubble or something. I don't know if that'll come through on the actual video, but if all this time goofy emojis have been happening, don't mind us. Shoot, where was I? That was a fun little distraction. Yeah, the greater adventure is the inner adventure. The world around us. There it is again.
Yeah, weird.
Because I'm doing the thumbs up, and it's like, oh, he must want a thumbs up.
Let me try. No, it didn't work.
The world around us, it is really exciting to watch your inner world reflect itself outside of you as you become more and more aware of truly what's happening and how it works. But once you become aware of what's happening and how it works, all of your focus and all of your attention begins to internalize because you recognize that as the central hub of creation. Mm-hmm. It's not that the world around you becomes less important. It's that the world around you is allowed to be the surprise that life wants it to be. Because while you're building something internally, as you're building that vision, as you're allowing it to grow to such a great extent that you can actually feel something in response to it, as you allow that inner world to function in the way it was intended, you're going to see and sense something inside of you that you couldn't possibly begin to detail outside of you. If you want a new home, you could detail that home to the last centimeter of its design. And the guarantee is that if you're moving from this very authentic place, from this path of enjoyment we're always talking about, your actual experience of that home, even if it's built to the exact specs that you initially designed, it's going to be better than you ever could have imagined. Mm-hmm. That's the surprise. So if you trust life enough, as you entrust yourself to life is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. As you entrust yourself to life, you find yourself not only a participant in the act of creation, but a recipient of the surprise that comes of that. Mm-hmm. These words are coming as I'm speaking. Yeah, you're not only a participant in the act of creation, you are a recipient of the surprise that comes of that, because you're not the one creating what comes. Right. Life is. Yes. It understands the essence of what you want, which is always larger than what you can see, and then it gives you that. Mm-hmm. You want a home, not just a house. So you blueprint the house and life gives you the home. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. This is wild and exciting. This is how surprise moves, and it moves as a result of our clarity. Yes. Not our questions, not our worries, not our need to know. We don't get to deal with any of that. In fact, all of it must be released in order for any part of what we're describing to begin to play out. But we've already done all this. We're in the life of the heart now. We're learning how to open. We're learning how to enjoy. We're learning how to pour our affection back into life. We're learning how to be so very assured that that assurance gives itself over to others so that they too can be equally assured, because what's in our bones is in theirs. Because the life that supports us is the same life that supports them. We become the avatar. We become the master. We become the symbol that a night is. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're called to in this day. In this day signature and every day. Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Did we miss anything?
No.
I think this is pretty spot on, pretty perfect. It feels good.
Yeah. You said it all.
I sure did say a lot. Okay.
Really
well,
good.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed this very much. It will be a pleasure for us to share this with you. Pretty neat to see that you get to witness a direct example of all of this in these videos. And then you get to go and find your version of it. But we love your presence. Mm-hmm. We're happy that you chose to join us. And tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to it already. Mm-hmm. And we'll see you when that time comes. Okay.
Okay.
And goodbye for now.
Bye.